This is Chris Freed, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
Hello, good people out there. Thank you once again for tuning into the Matt Balaker podcast. It makes me feel warm, fuzzy, and appreciated. You don't have to smash the subscribe button. You can gently click it, and please encourage your friends and acquaintances to do the same thing. We have some more Pennsylvania love for the show tonight. Our executive producer, Eric, is from there, as is today's guest. He hails from Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. He's a regular performer at the Comedy Cellar, New York. He's a panelist on the Greg Gutfeld show. He's a fellow intern. He's written for SNL, Conan O'Brien, and is just an all-around good human being. Please join me in welcoming Kris Freed to the program. How you doing, Kris?
Oh, thank you for that. That was very nice. I'm well.
Happy to hear that. So you're a Pennsylvanian. When did you learn that you had the comedy bug?
Well, for actual stand-up, I never really thought I'd get into stand-up. It just seemed like something that was too ridiculous to learn the whole thing. I always wanted to be in entertainment. I did TV film in school, and I just thought I'd be in the business somehow, maybe write a script or something and work my way in. But then after the interning at Conan and SNL and meeting writers and cast and kind of was around stand-up more, and I figured, why not go start some open mics? And it didn't seem as far-fetched as, what you see growing up, like Eddie Murphy doing Madison Square Garden. So kind of just slipped into it over time. But I mean, short answer, I guess, is school when you're young, kind of enjoying getting laughs. And
yeah, well, what kind of student were you?
I was very back and forth, and I was good when I wanted to be. Like, I knew I could get good grades, but then sometimes I just didn't want to, or I knew that it wouldn't matter, or but yeah, when I needed to, like in college, and then I started saying, all right, I can actually read a book and answer things. But yeah, I mean, I had the humor side, but I would always kind of make friends with the teachers enough to where you can get away with things, and only a couple detentions here and there, but
a few detentions, Kris, are a small price to pay for class clowndom. So this is good advice that you're sharing. Get in well with the teachers first, youngins, and then you can.
I was going to say the class clown thing is weird because usually the class clown ends up getting. The person gets voted that who's kind of like the more destructive person, like the kid who just curses and throws stuff at the teacher, as opposed to someone who's like actually funny and creative. Mm-hmm. So that's why I wasn't too worried about being the class clown, just because I didn't, that's reserved for the one who ends up in jail. So
well, as a class clown myself, I've yet to do time, but the year's not over, so we'll see what 2023 has in store. So you're in Pennsylvania. You realize you liked entertainment. You kicked around writing scripts, but then you majored in it. What motivated you to major in film and television, Kris?
I guess just because when like new video cameras came out, and my friends and I got to make, it was easier to edit little movies and stuff. So when I was in high school, I ended up doing with the yearbook group, we did a yearbook movie where, we made some stupid story about promoting the yearbook, and we got to go around and get out of class and film stupid things. And then when we put it all together, I learned editing, and that was like senior year. So that led to my decisions of majoring in TV film stuff wherever I could. And I ended up going to DeSales undergrad, which is in Pennsylvania. It just so happened to be a close place that it was just the best program I got in. So, and
that makes it easy.
Worked out well just because it was close to New York for internships and all that. So
sure. So what was your parents' reaction when you said you wanted to major in film and TV?
Oh, they were fine with anything, as long as it seemed like, I was still staying in college, and I'm sure they just assumed it would kind of lead to a more stable job eventually. But because they would always push like, well, you don't have to do what you go to school for.
You're not locked in forever.
Yeah,
So
my dad is a military guy, so no matter what I'm interested in, he always tries to make it lead to something with the police, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know if that's for me.
how
But
did this help secure our nation, Kris?
yeah.
Well,
And
we had an
he's like, oh, well, you can make a movie about cops, and I'm just like, that's not relevant. I'm sorry, but
you could do it right now. Good luck getting it financed, but
yeah.
hey, give it a shot. So we had Adam Jensner. I'm not sure if
Oh yeah.
if you know him, but he's a fellow Pennsylvanian. He
Mhm.
also took advantage of the intern opportunities. He traveled hours. I'm a fellow Conan O'Brien intern myself, but I
Oh,
want to
nice.
get your story. How did you get your foot in the door at
Well,
those places?
I'll tell the Adam Yenser story first, but
Oh, please do, and don't hold back.
oh no, he's from Macungie, which is close to me in Allentown, and he was the intern coordinator taking over for the girl that interviewed me. So once I got on, when I showed up, there was a different coordinator, and it was Adam. And then we were leaving on the first day, and we just happened to be heading out at the same time. And I said, I'm going to the Port Authority. And he was like, oh, me too. I'll walk over. And then we were going to the same area. And we were like, oh, where are you going? And I said, I'm taking the Bieber bus to Allentown or whatever. And so we were just on the same bus. And so we would go back and forth every day or every other day. And then we ended up starting stand up together. So we met at Conan. And he was actually, hired where I was just an intern. But
Right.
then we sort of started open mics together around Allentown and New York.
So the Conan connection is strong. So what was your first foray into the open mic world?
Oh, I think I did some just random goofy one in New York where, someone kind of just said, it was like barely even prepared, like notes or anything, because the one guy was like, oh, nobody cares, just blah blah blah. And it wasn't, I don't even really count it, because I didn't even, I just got up and talked to 4 people about what I was doing there and whatever. But then the actual one where I did jokes that was in Allentown at the Allentown Brew Works, and it was actually a booked show just because there wasn't a lot of things going on in the area. And the guy running it, I messaged him, and I saw there was a comedy show, and that was rare. And I messaged him and said, I worked for Conan and SNL and so I seemed better than I was. And I think he just assumed that I had done stuff before, but I think I had like 10 minutes, and, it wasn't great, but I did some musical stuff with it. So it kind of took up time, and, but it went fine. I never really had that like out of the gate super bombing experience until, a few mics later in New York and LA and stuff. But
yeah, what was your first super bomb?
Well, besides just the regular bombs of there not being a crowd, there's like taco stands in New York that technically have shows, and you're just talking to 3 people that aren't paying attention. And so you're bombing, but I didn't get upset because, what are you going to do? The first time I felt really horrible was when I went to LA, and my friend, it was right when the
Writer strike?
The thing at the Comedy Store that they do, each comic does a minute, and then they judge you. It's like Joe Rogan and
oh wow, okay.
What's that stupid podcast called? Anyway, it's real big now. But so I didn't know what the show was, and my friend was a big fan of this thing, so he's like, oh yeah, we just go, you put your name in a hat, and okay, great. There's like 70 or 80 comics like waiting.
Oh, it's called Kill Something, or
Kill Tony.
Kill Tony, yeah, Tony Hinch, yeah.
And so I don't even know. I just think it's an open mic. I'm like putting my name in the hat. I think it's maybe 5 minutes. I'm just kind of whatever. So then they start the show, and it's Joe Rogan and Dom Irrera, and they come out, and it's this whole thing. And then Joe Rogan, kills it with people for 10 minutes. Then they go, all right, we're going to start the open mic portion. And they say, yeah, everybody gets 1 minute. And I'm just in my head, I'm like, oh, Jesus, I didn't know this. Now I'm trying to think of what jokes are just real quick. I can.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, first out of the hat, it was me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Out of 80 people or whatever, I was the first one. And also I'm new and not good anyway at this point. So I go up and start, and the crowd just stares at me because, probably wasn't good. And also they just want Joe Rogan to make fun of people.
Right.
So
they're not on your side. They're not encouraging you.
Yeah. So that was the first time where ever, like, for 1 minute, I had to stare knowing that this is horrible. I just want to run away. And then afterward they talk to you, and I said, in my head, I'm just thinking, no matter what you say, it's going to be a roast. So just shut up. Don't say anything. I was like, yep, I know. Okay. And just walked off, and yeah. And then you feel like shit around the Comedy Store but nobody remembers. So who cares?
Yeah. I mean, what did you glean from that years later? Like what are your takeaways now that you're older and wiser?
Just, you can't let something scare you into doing it again, and also you don't want to run away. Like you face it with laughing at yourself. So it's like, even after the show, I told myself, just go up to people, be nice. And, so I think I even went up to Hinchcliffe or someone, and I was just like, hey, thanks for blah, blah, blah. And he doesn't care. It's just kind of as long as you look like a good spirit. Like if anyone ever saw me there again, I want them to think, yeah, he's a nice guy, as opposed to he sucks and is going to kill himself. And, so also there was one of the jokes that I did that normally works all the time, and it didn't work just because they hated me at that point. And I remember thinking, if I can ever get this on TV where I can say that it bombed, whatever in this circumstance, and then you see me doing it like on TV or on a show, or so I had that in my TV sets that I submitted to a couple things, and I haven't gotten on yet. But the point is, it still works to this day in shows. So joke was good, setting was not.
Well, when you do it on live TV and you go on the Rogan podcast, you can share the story with them.
Yeah, that was kind of the motivation at the time. I was like, someday I'm gonna tell them to look this clip up and say, look what I did with it. But
so I want to learn more. You went to grad school in Boston. Can you tell us about that?
I did. I did a master's in psychology at Harvard University.
I think I've heard of that place. And
yeah.
So how did that help your stand-up career?
Well, it was good at the time just because it was a different place to go do open mics and stuff. And I had a couple shows in Nick's Comedy Stop and the Comedy Studio, which was at Harvard Square. But at the time I was still, that was like before I went to LA and everything. So I was still pretty new, and it was a good place to get on stage. And, it doesn't matter who's around because I'm probably moving away anyway.
Right.
So it wasn't like, I was there for too long and in the scene where I had to worry about, who saw me and new stuff.
What was your degree in at Harvard?
That was psychology. I just chose that because I knew I could write papers about it easily, and I'm interested in it, even though I wasn't really pursuing a career. But I just also figured if all goes to hell, maybe I would pursue a career and keep going in it. But I got that idea through people like Colin Jost, who I got to know at SNL and did a couple shows with him and stuff. So he went to Harvard, and I was joking one day about like, well, if I had Harvard on my resume, I could, just as a writer, maybe people would say, oh, he's a smart guy or something.
Sure.
So he was like, well, they have other, it started as, maybe just take some online courses and it looks like you can still get that credit. And then it just kind of kept going, and I got accepted into the full program, and I was working from home at the time. So I could move and do whatever I wanted. So I ended up going in person and doing the classes. And so I ended up getting the whole degree, and just kind of kept going, and hopefully good for the resume.
And then how long was the program?
It was about 2 years, but it was only a year and a half where I was kind of back and forth in person. And then the thesis took a little extra, just because they take forever to okay everything and keep it going. So then I ended up doing the thesis when I moved to LA, because again, it was kind of remote and I could just message people online and do surveys and stuff. So it worked out well.
I wrote a book about Greg Giraldo, a famous Harvard alum, and that kind of kickstarted at least interest in comedy. And it seems like, Colin Jost, there's a ton of SNL writers. I mean, I think it's one of the more fruitful places for Conan. Yeah,
always the famous one. I think maybe Bob Odenkirk, possibly. I forget if he was in that, but
yeah,
it's the Lampoon, obviously.
The Harvard Lampoon was sort of a pipeline to writing for The Simpsons, and then to some extent SNL. Yeah. So you finish up at the hallowed halls of Cambridge, Massachusetts. Then you moved to LA. I assume you took on some debt. Like, what was in your head at this point? You're like, all right, I got this degree. Now I want to go tell dick jokes. Like, how does that reconcile?
I mean, well, luckily, I always had supportive parents that kind of, anytime I wanted to take a big jump of something, even though I was working for the WWE from home. And so I had, a job and stuff where I could do that, from home during the day or whatever weird hours, and then kind of go out at night and network or do, mics and meet people for shows and stuff. So I was never like super, I had, some loans and things, but it was never like crazy, because I always knew that I could, bitch out and ask for a little help if I had to. But then the WWE thing ended sort of when I was kind of getting ready to move back. Well, I thought that I was moving back east for another WWE job, because I was trying to be a writer where you go on the road and everything. And, I had an interview, and I had an in where the guy kind of told me there's a good chance. And so as I decided to move back east, it kind of fell through, and it wasn't becoming what it was, but I already in my brain sort of decided I was going back east. So then I kind of just decided New York might be a better comedy thing for me. And it worked out better that way. I had, I think, a little more luck getting the ball rolling on the East Coast.
It sounds that way. I want to rewind just a bit, Kris. What did you do for the WWE?
I interviewed out of college as a writer, or a writer's assistant, I guess it would have started as. And then someone else got that, but they liked me, and they asked if I wanted to do the creative team for the website. So at the time, they weren't doing as much social media that's now, like just Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And they were trying to build their own site called WWE Universe. It would be kind of like a Facebook for just their fans, or, you go on, you make a profile, and it's their own little social network. And they ended up scrapping the whole thing, but I got to go in and was on the creative team for that. And I was a featured blogger, and you do interviews with wrestlers and stuff like that. So, but the whole time I was kind of, hoping that it would lead to getting on the creative team for the show. So never did. But then it ended up just being, once the site launched, it was a from home thing, because you just work from home and you moderate the thing, and, you ban users for posting naked wrestler photos and all that kind of stuff. So it ended up being kind of just a stupid BS social media kind of position. But it paid stuff at the time and allowed me to move around everywhere. So it worked out.
So Kris, you're not an FBI agent, but at one point
No.
that was a possibility.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the story about that, please?
Yeah, that also was that was the only suggestion from the military father that that almost became a thing. Because when I moved back east and didn't have any the submissions for comedy writing, I didn't have anything super going at the time, and because I just finished the thesis for psychology, the master's, my dad said, well, hey, the FBI needs people with psychology degrees, and I just thought it was ridiculous. And then he knew a special agent, and I talked to some people, and they said, yeah, no, that would be an interesting background that you have, and this and that. And I got recommendations from a state senator, and like a 3-star general that somehow I got hooked up with, and everyone's telling me that I'd be good. And so I did like the fit test, and I'm training for everything. And then
it's a fit test, like the
FBI special agent.
You jumping rope, or what does that entail?
Well, it entails you do sit-ups, as many sit-ups as you can do in whatever it is, a minute. Then you sprint. I think it's like, I think it's like three quarters of a full track and field, whatever distance that is a sprint. Then you do as many push-ups as you can do, and then you do a 1.5-mile run, and then I think some pull-ups after that. But so there's a bar for each of these things, and you have to acquire so many points to pass the test. And I was doing pretty good and training for it. And so anyway, I had applied and got accepted and met with special agents, and they're telling you what to expect through this whole process. And it takes forever, and you keep waiting for the next part, and you go in and out of Philly or New York to talk to people. So then it goes to the phase 2 interview. And that's the one, well, I did like the writing sample was great, and the phase 2 interview, you go in, and there's 3 special agents there, and I just feel like my personality maybe wasn't what they're used to, or I don't know. But so that the whole process is that they give you a scenario. They say, tell us about a time when whatever. And one might be when you felt your life was threatened, and what did you do, and how did it end up? And so you have to tell, like, there's like 11 questions or something, and for each one you have to tell the scenario, what you did, and then how your choices like benefited the result and all this. So I'm telling stories, but I'm sure they're used to people that are like military and cops and whatever. And so
you're like, I'm on Kill Tony and Joe Rogan's staring me down. So.
Yeah, like I'm telling a story about like people doing coke in the Improv in LA, and I don't know, like stupid shit. And so I just feel like maybe my conversational style of, because I'm asking them questions, and then I like cut myself off. I'm like, oh yeah, you're not supposed to do that. For I'll be like, well, how come you guys are blah blah blah, and then they just look around at each other, and then I'm like, yeah, I'll shut up. Whoops. So even though I do feel like if I went to Quantico and buckled down, like I would have been fine. I think I would have been an interesting personality in the thing, but I maybe didn't show to them that I was super serious at the time. But there's also the thing where I met, Gutfeld. I'm on the Gutfeld show, and they probably don't want people that may look political, or so there was that. But
they're like, all the tests were great, but you're on the Gutfeld show. We have to draw the line somewhere. We're the FBI.
Yeah, you never know with things that come out.
But isn't it a completely apolitical organization, and they would never let bias influence their hiring process?
That's how I tried to portray it anyway. I
Well,
think
so
I might have even said that as like a joking, and I just look around and
you're
they're
like,
like,
we don't do humor here, Kris.
yeah.
So you might not be an FBI agent, but you achieved, which is a very significant rite of passage for many East Coast comedians, and that's being a regular or essentially getting passed at the Comedy Cellar.
Uh,
Can you share us with our audience what that was like?
Very nerve-wracking and great at the same time, because I had watched a documentary with that kind of goes into the cellar and Esty and the whole process, and so as I'm going through it, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, that's what this guy did, or whatever. But it was fine, and everyone was great. I don't even know how I really got it officially, because I know like Gutfeld is friends with the owner, and I met Noam on a show on Bill Schultz and Joanne Nosachinsky's show, and I don't think he remembered me, but I don't know. He seemed like a nice guy, and so either him or Gutfeld said something, and also Artie Lang, I think, said he was going to say something, but I also don't know if he ever did, because he kind of got into his own stuff for a while. So yeah, I don't really know exactly how it happened, but then out of nowhere, Esty, messaged me and said, she heard my name and we planned an audition thing. So you go and they just kind of tell you what you're doing. And I think it was like 8 minutes, and she watches you. And then, everyone has their story of kind of her reaction. Like some people say, oh, she's going to look like she hates you, don't worry about it.
Right.
But she was real friendly and laughing, and then I got booked for like maybe 2 months or so, and a couple shows a week, and they try out different places. And then I heard a couple people kind of warn me, like, when you stop getting booked, don't freak out, it's just kind of their process. Then they'll sprinkle you in again in the future, maybe, or so they just kind of like, you're in the club but not necessarily booked ever, because they have a more famous people or just people that have put in more, time there or
more time.
Whatever. So yeah, it's a great place to go and get a couple free drinks and and feel like you're welcome somewhere. Although most people just forget who I am every time anyway. But I'm on the list of the bar tab, so that's fine.
Well, yeah, he's a regular at the bar there, so that the Olive Tree Cafe. So now that you've had
Mark Norman, I did like a few shows with Mark Norman. Every single time he thinks I'm a fan, like saying hello. Like he'll just pass me and go, comedy. And I go, yeah, whoops, me again.
I'm in the same fraternity, Mark.
Yeah. Very nice. It's just I'm probably super awkward too and whatever. But
well, now that you're on this show, your star just elevated. So Mark Normand will never forget you again. You've had some years under your belt now as a comedian. What are some of the most important lessons you've learned during your tenure?
Oh, I would say roll with whatever, and don't. I don't like whenever I like being able to show up somewhere, and if like something isn't the way you need it, just don't, like, still just go out and do your thing. And I've had people, headliners, if I'm featuring or opening or whatever, they'll say, hey, like, crowd work is my thing, so try not to do too much. I'm like, that's everybody's thing.
Right.
You can do it if something happens, like, so then in my head I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll not be as charismatic with the crowd this time.
Yes.
So I try.
I'll only ask 2 questions instead of 7.
Yeah, or just anyone who has an issue, I like to be the one that can work around it. Don't worry about it. Have a good attitude. I did. Oh, this shirt, the Sunny Rest.
Sunny Rest Resort. Yes.
I got this for doing a nudist resort.
Oh, they give shirts at a nudist resort. That's
that was the irony of it, is that I got this for getting naked on stage.
Oh wow!
Because
full Monty. I
didn't plan it, and then so you have to do a half hour at this place and there's no stage. You're just standing like over the pool or next to the pool. And there's people just like swimming in the pool and lounging around, and everybody's naked and weird. And, it escalated because it started going, like it was good. It was better than I thought they would be. And then I made the mistake of one joke didn't go well, and I took my shoe off, and I was like, all right, so if you guys keep laughing, for every good whatever, I was like, I'll take off a piece of clothing. And I'm just thinking like, I'll do it for a little bit and whatever. And then, obviously then people don't really give a shit about the jokes. And by the end of the show, they're just saying, take it off like this. No one's listening anymore to the actual material. So I kind of had to make the decision for the big finish. I went for the pants off, backflip into the pool, and I made someone wait with a towel for me on the way out. So I kind of just slipped in real quick and earned some applause points.
So all it took was disrobing. But I think, Kris, your FBI training helped if you're able to do a backflip as your closer and not break your neck. Yeah. So congratulations.
That was my trampoline training as a child.
So what are you most optimistic about in terms of comedy or the entertainment industry in general?
Well, I'm still optimistic I like the idea of writing like a screenplay or, a pilot and things to sell. So I'm still very optimistic. I wrote a pilot that we actually filmed, and we filmed a couple episodes really. It's called Collecting, and it's about a guy milking the unemployment system. So it's kind of like a Curb Your Enthusiasm type character and humor, but with an unsuccessful guy who's milking the system instead of a rich, successful writer. And the humor's kind of the same. There's a lot of callbacks and things like that. But it's called Collecting, and it's at patreon.com/Kris Fried. So I just put that out recently and trying to gain a little following that might pay for some future episodes. But
I think that's a great idea, and I admire that you're creating your own path. It's not like you're relying on pitch meetings.
The idea was to try to sell it, and I had a couple of little leads and people that might help, but it didn't go anywhere. And then with COVID, it was right in the middle of all that, so it kind of got whatever. And we finished putting it all together, and I just figured I'd try to get it out there, and then while still trying to sell it eventually. But I'd like to sell a feature, I think is the next goal on my list sometime. But I haven't been able to figure out the whole manager agent situation with that. But open to anyone who wants to contact me.
Speaking of, Kris, where can managers, agents, influencers, fans, nudists, where can they find you?
Well, to check out the show stuff, it's Kris with a K, Fried spelled like fried. So patreon.com/Kris Fried. But other than that, just Facebook and Instagram. Instagram, I think, is Kris.Fried. And my Fox News clips are on YouTube. So I have a montage video on there.
It's very funny. Check it out.
Yeah, just type Kris Fried, Gutfeld, probably that'll show up.
Well, Kris Fried, thank you so much for joining us today on the Matt Balaker podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, and Spotify too. I got 2 albums on Spotify if anyone wants to, or iTunes and all that.
We can't forget Spotify and iTunes. We'll link below. Thanks again, Kris, and look forward to having you back in the not too distant future.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.